This book made me do something I pretty much never do. Hi, I'm Adam Caesar. I write books and talk about horror on the internet. Give me a follow if you want to see more like this. This is The Angel of Indian Lake. It is the third book in Stephen Graham Jones's Indian Lake trilogy. The trilogy that started with My Heart is a Chainsaw and continued in Don't Fear the Reaper and is now ending in this. Now, when I say this book made me do something I never ever do, there's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of books. There's a lot of movies. So I know a lot of people do it. I know a lot of people have like comfort books and books they read over and over again. But outside of like when I was teaching, I never really reread books. I read books. I enjoy them. I move on to the next one. I'm kind of the opinion that life's too short. Why reread books? The Angel of Indian Lake changed all that for me. So here they are all together, and if you're unfamiliar with these at all, if you haven't read My Heart is a Chainsaw, it is a slasher book. It is about a young woman when we first meet her, Jade Daniels. She is in high school. She's kind of just graduating or not graduating from high school, and she lives in this small Idaho town called Proof Rock, and there is about to be a luxury town that these rich people are building right across from where she lives, with her dad, who's like kind of a scumbag, and her dad's scumbag friend, and a lot of these different people in the town that we get to know throughout all these books. And Jade, in a way of kind of dealing with her crappy life and her trauma, and when we meet her, she is obsessed with slasher movies. She is not only obsessed with slasher movies, she's obsessed with the idea of slasher cycles and the signs and portents and the reason that a slasher might appear, be it a whodunit slasher or a supernatural slasher, the reason that they would visit a place and start carving people up. And in this first book, she prays for a slasher to kind of visit her town and met out justice, or at least what she imagines would be justice if someone or something came to the town and started killing people. It's not a spoiler to say, since there are two other books, she gets her wish, she gets her prayers answered, but it's definitely not in the way that she wants. And we follow her through these other books. I'm trying to talk about them in a non-spoiler way, but it's really tough, especially when you're talking about the third book in a trilogy. I'm going to do my best here. Between each of these books, there is a time jump where something significant has happened, and we meet up with Jade a little bit later, and she's a different person in each book as we meet her. Now the reason I reread these books, I'd like to say it was just because they're so amazing and so great that I had to reread them. They are amazing, they are great, but that really wasn't the reason. The reason is, when I was starting to read Don't Fear the Reaper, it had been a little bit since My Heart is a Chainsaw, which is a book I actually got to read, luckily enough, in pre-release, and I was kind of struggling with this book because this book, unlike the other two that follow Jade's POV very closely, this book jumps around to all the different people in the town, some of the people that survived the events of the first book, and we like kind of piece together what's going on with Jade's through their perspective instead of through Jade's perspective. And it was really confusing me the first time I read this book, but I kind of muscled through and I really enjoyed it, and I still liked where it ends up and what it does. But when The Angel of Indian Lake arrived at my door, I kind of realized that maybe I'm getting older now. Maybe my memory's not so good as it used to be. I should reread these, and I should read them kind of all in a row. And I've got to tell you, really, no blowing smoke, I've been very, very vocal about Stephen Graham Jones being my favorite living, working horror author. When you read them all in a row like that, it's almost undeniable. This is maybe his magnum opus. This is maybe his best book if you take them kind of as one long piece of fiction. Get this book, get Don't Fear the Reaper, but read them all in a row if you can. They are incredible. They are so dense and so literate. It's kind of a hacky thing to say in modern horror movies, and especially in modern slasher like reboots and sequels. You'll watch some director, some writer, some actor talking about how, oh, these movies are really about trauma, or this is horror about trauma. No knock on those movies. But they're 90-minute movies. They are pop movies. They are popcorn movies. They can't really delve into verisimilitude in psychological characterization the way that like 1,000+ pages of prose fiction can do. What Stephen Graham Jones does here with Jade Daniels is craft one of the most incredible depictions of a final girl ever. I think maybe the definitive image, the definitive depiction of a final girl. Not in that she is this prototypical final girl. That's kind of the point. It is this idea of she is her like rejection of the final girl mantle. She has all these different people in her life and all these different people that she meets that she puts on a kind of pedestal and gives them like what her highest honor, at least in the first and the second book, like her highest honor would be like, oh yeah, you're a final girl. Like that's like a cool thing to her. It's an aspirational thing, but she would never consider herself that. And he does this kind of magic trick thing with this third book, where these books are incredible as slasher stories. They are incredible as horror stories. They are scary and weird and hyper violent, and the body counts are insane. Like the amount of killers and victims in these books is staggering. If you did them as a film, you would need like a Ben-Hur amount of people, amount of actors to be all the extras and stuff that get killed in these books. They stand on their own as that. They stand on their own as great pieces of slasher fiction. But if you read them through the lens of doubting Jade or trying to call BS on like certain things Jade says and certain things Jade thinks and certain things Jade does, they become this incredible piece of almost film theory. It's such a hard thing to talk about because, to be quite honest, first book I thought it was great. I was like, you know what, this is like the writing and the pacing and the actual plot itself is like maybe a contender for Stephen Graham Jones's best book. I've read a lot of his books. I've read, he was incredibly prolific before he had the 1-2 hit of Mongrels and Only Good Indians. He had published like 20 plus books before that, and I've read a good amount of them. But he keeps getting better with these mainstream publishing books. They just keep getting this like diamond honed to them. And I thought this book was great, but at the time I wasn't so much of a series guy. I was like, okay, that's great, but something like Only Good Indians, that's his real masterwork. Because look at it, it's got a beginning and a middle and an end, and it just sits there perfectly as this incredible thing. But this was really just Act 1. These books have to be taken in as a whole. Like my opinion of My Heart is a Chainsaw changed so much on my reread, and my opinion of Don't Fear the Reaper was like, that first time I was a little confused. I was a little like, okay, I kind of get it. The second time through, I was like, oh, this is the best book. And then you read 3, and you're like, no, that was just the first 2 acts. This thing brings it all home. It seals it up in this nice little package. And the ending, I'm a new dad. The way that this book talks about parenthood, and the way that the series talks about like the idea that like not all parents are good parents, and not all good parents are even your parents, is just incredibly beautiful, and incredibly smart and heartfelt. In addition to all the other stuff, in addition to all the bloodshed, in addition to all the really, really smart thinking about movies and horror movies and why we like them and what we get out of them and what parts of ourselves they are, when we kind of put on the black t-shirt when we talk about our horror fandom. It's just so, it's just amazing. Like, these books are incredible. And I know not everyone is going to have that response, and I know not everyone is going to have that takeaway, because they're weird. In the whole first book, you're like, is this a Girl Who Cried Wolf story? Like, is that what this is? Like, and then weirder stuff starts happening, and it gets more and more supernatural, and it gets further away from what you would think of as a traditional slasher, and then 3 kind of brings it all back. It's just incredible. It's just, like I said, I think I called it a magic trick. That's what it feels like to me. When I read something like this, when I read fiction this good, I'm like, I'll be quite honest, I'm a little bit jealous when it happens, but it doesn't happen all that much. But like, when I read a book like this, I'm like, God damn, like, I can never do this. Like, I could never reach this level, but I'm gonna try. Man, it's so freaking good.